Welcome to Books, Booze, and Murder. I'm Anna,
And I'm Alexa.
and we're two besties who love to read and, like many, have a fascination with true crime. Holy shit. We finally hit record.
Yeah.
Holy shit!
It's cool.
My mom was like, when you do a podcast, you really shouldn't swear a lot. And I said,
No, it's not happening. Sorry, Clara.
No promises.
No way.
So before we dive in, we figured we'd share a little about ourselves and why the hell we started this project. So, yeah.
So I guess a couple of the questions that we can ask each other that honestly, with being avid readers and having our very own book club, we've never actually asked each other these questions. We haven't actually had this type of conversation. So first one, Anna, what got you into reading in the first place?
So I grew up with my parents reading to me every night. Oh yeah, guys, if you hear dogs, my dogs are home and they're assholes. Anyway.
Demons.
So
Demon puppies.
So I grew up from a very young age. Like if it was me and my mom home, she'd read to me every night. I think my favorite book was Duck's Truck Got Stuck in the Mud.
Yes.
But of course, like when my mom went out to do her thing, my dad would read. So it was something I always grew up with. And then I grew up as an only child. So other than watching TV, my main entertainment was reading a book. And that became more and more consistent throughout like grade school, reading a lot of Nora Roberts, James Patterson, and then it's always been a constant. So it's fun to get away from the real world sometimes.
Yeah, seriously.
What about you?
I think for me, it was like, I'm going to age myself here. I'm going to call myself old right now. When we were growing up as 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, we didn't have televisions in our cars for long car rides.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was either you got a compact DVD player. There was the very rare car that had a built-in VCR, if anyone knows what that is.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That was a thing. But then for the most part, it was books. Yeah. We didn't have iPods, iPod Nanos, iPod Touches. We didn't have any of those yet. It was you either listen to the music your parents were playing, which 9 times out of 10 we hated, or I read a book, or we slept, which I did a probably even split of both. And with my family traveling to North Carolina all the time, because that's where my mom's parents are from, it was an escape. And so for me, growing up, it was, and of course, my dad always makes fun of me for this. I would go to hockey games in high school, and I'd bring a book with me. And I'm like, and he's like, Lex, you really concern me sometimes with all of that. I'm like, I don't care. This is what I want to do. I don't like people.
Yeah.
But so so of course, my big ones were, of course, Nicholas Sparks. Mm-hmm. You read enough of him, though, and it's predictable what's going to happen. So I'm like, I loved the story when I was younger. I loved his very cookie cutter, very set up. What was another one? Oh, I mean, the Amelia Bedelia books were some of my favorites when I was really little. And Junie B. Jones. Those were the other really big ones. And of course, like Nicholas Sparks was when I was in high school. Yeah. And that was when you're obviously fantasizing about romance. All the wonderful men in my life that I want in my life. Bullshit.
I know.
We're both happily married now as well.
Yes.
So we both found the men of our dreams.
I mean, to be fair, I was introduced to Nora Roberts, I think, like in 7th or 8th grade. And that's when hormones are raging. So it was constantly thinking about sex.
Yeah.
And then thinking, my high school teacher has a ton of Nora Roberts books on his shelf. What is happening? Oh my God. Mm-hmm. Does he know I'm reading about sex right now?
Your teacher's also reading about it.
Yep.
It's fine.
Yep. Okay. Next question. If you could only read one book and or series for the rest of your life, what would it be?
You know, like lately, for the past several years, it has been Jodi Picoult. She has been my go-to author because I don't know if anyone else has read her like I have, but she is the queen of plot twists, like end of the book plot twists. It is just like, oh, like when did that happen? How did that happen? Wait, I gotta go back and read it again. How did that? What?
But wait, Didn't you mention, you and your mom mentioned at the last book club, like, neither of us have TikTok, but, like,
Right.
we're those millennials who watch TikToks on Instagram.
I was about to say, we watch the TikToks on Instagram
But
when they get to Instagram.
didn't she do a whole TikTok about how to pronounce her last name?
My mother did?
Or, like, you and your mom brought it up or something. Isn't her last name, like, Pico or something like that?
Picoult. Oh, no, it's Pico.
Pico!
It was Jalen. It was Jalen that mentioned the proper pronunciation of her name.
So another book club attendee. Pico. We have to retrain our brains.
I know. I know. It's bad. It's fine. It's fine.
But yeah, I mean, at the time I've known you, you've definitely read like every book by her.
So. No, I have not. I have a lot. No. Like, but, oh my God, I can remember in high school when I was reading, when My Sister's Keeper came out. Mm-hmm. I can remember on my iPod.
Yes.
I bought the movie. My mom saw I bought the movie and she was like, Alexa, you can't watch the movie yet. You have to finish reading the book. My mother said this to me and I'm like, I know I'm going to finish reading the book because I think I was halfway through when it finally came out.
Yeah.
And then I watched the movie and then I finished reading the book, watched the movie. I was devastated.
Yeah.
I was devastated. Oh my God. We'll talk about that another day too. We will totally talk about that movie book combo because I have so much to say about that.
Sounds about right.
What about you though?
I think you might be able to guess it.
Yes.
Sylvia Day's Crossfire series. I think I've read that, like, I've read Harry Potter twice, and each time I'm like, Harry Potter's a little twat. Like, it's true. Like, in the movies, he's portrayed differently. Yes. But I'm like, okay, every once in a while, maybe. But no, Crossfire, that I could read just over and over and over again, because it is so raunchy and, like, such a turn on, like 50 Shades can be, but without, like, all the BDSM, but there's still, like, the intensity, and, like, Sylvia Day normalizes going to therapy over past trauma, so the actual storyline without the sex is great, but those books are so good. Like, if I could only have that one series on my shelf for the rest of life, I'd be happy.
The sex is pretty good, too.
It's so good. I learned stuff, and I was like, wait, you can do that? Yes, please.
Welcome to my marriage. Yeah. It's fine. All right. And then last one. Oh, so now going in the other direction. What is one book or author that you have read or heard about but will never read for whatever reason?
The Lovely Bones.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we're in middle school.
Yeah.
Oh, look, there's the asshole dogs next door too. It's lovely. So I think it was like middle school when that book was getting really popular. So I picked it up because I was like, okay, like this is the rate, like let's check this out. And I could not finish it. It's the second book in my life that I haven't been able to finish, but it's the first book in my life that I didn't finish because I got depressed. Like, wholeheartedly could not handle it. I didn't have dark thoughts for like harming myself, but I did not enjoy the book. When the movie came out, I was like, there's no way I'm going to see it. And every time I see it now, I'm like, I don't know. Nope.
That was a tough book.
Yeah.
That was a really hard, heart-wrenching, like nothing really good came from it.
Yeah. I think I like had some sort of spoiler where someone told me what happened, but it still was assholes. Like, yeah. I mean, I kind of wanted it because I was like, okay, like how does this resolve itself? So I wasn't always thinking about it. But that's one book where I'm never going to finish it. There's no need for me to. What about you? It by Stephen King.
Thank you. I will read a Stephen King book, but I think I got the spoiler that at the end of that book, it's obviously different from the movie in the most yucky way possible, where I'm like, I don't know if I could ever unhear or unsee or unthink any of that. So that's a no for me. And it's funny, like, I don't see myself as being huge into all of the thriller types books anyways. Yeah. Like, very stereotypically, I'm much more into the romance and the comedy and the mystery. But, like, the thriller stuff, like, I don't know if I could ever read Shutter Island. I don't know if I could ever read, like, any of those really big, stereotypical, scared shitless books.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even like scary movies. Why would I read a scary book?
Oh, I can't, like, I love true crime, but I can't do a scary movie, like horror. So I've actually never read a Stephen King book. I think I watched part of a Stephen King movie, and I was like, I can't do this. So I've actually never even seen it. There's no desire there.
Yeah, I think one of my ex-boyfriends made me watch it. It was awful.
And that's why he's called an X.
And that's why he's called an X, exactly.
So, all right. So before we talk about our first featured book, we do want to give a blank statement to everyone listening so everyone knows our intention with this podcast. So for the foreseeable future, we plan on recording about once a month. We both have busy lives, one of us being a teacher and a coach. What's free time? I don't know what that is for you.
Not a thing. and we're redoing our entire house.
Yeah. Home renovations, coaching, teaching, what? And there's only so much reading we can do. So maybe down the line we'll record twice a month, but it's not currently in the plans. When it comes to talking about the book, we will be talking it through just like a normal book club would. So if you have not read the particular book we're featuring, there will be spoilers. We will give everything away. So that's your only warning, first and only warning. So to be fair, we will talk about the next featured book at the end of each episode, so you have the time to get your hands on what will be featured, and then listen in as we chat and go a little crazy because that's just our style. While we do have booze in our title, we're also both in our 30s, and coffee or some other beverage will be thrown into the mix depending on how we're feeling. However, we think it would be fun to feature a drink every episode that represents in one way or another the book we're talking about. And then particularly on my end for the true crime portion, I do not plan on covering well-known murders such as Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy. You get the picture. I'm not covering those serial killers. There are plenty of podcasts out there that do a fantastic job of talking about them. So for me, there's just no point unless there's a lot of people saying, we really want to get your take on it. And then I'll consider it, but that's not my plan at the moment. We do, however, want to shed light on unsolved murders, crimes involving members of the Indigenous community and people of color, current crimes, and pretty much anything else that grabs our attention. So I'm a little all over the place, but we're just starting, so there's a lot of room to grow. So we do have drinks in front of us, and we do have a book in front of us. So you want to take over?
So we will start off with #1 New York Times bestseller, Where the Crawdads Sing. So this obviously blew up this past summer, last year, 2023, I think is kind of when it hit the press and everyone just freaked out about it. So this is by Delia Owens, and I'll read the little insert real quick, and then I'll give you my little tidbit about it. For years, rumors of the Marsh Girl have haunted Barclay Cove, a quiet town on the North Carolina coast. So in late 1969, when handsome Chase Andrews is found dead, the locals immediately suspect Kaya Clark, the so-called Marsh Girl. But Kaya is not what they say. Sensitive and intelligent, she has survived for years alone in the marsh that she calls home, finding friends in the gulls and lessons in the sand. Then the time comes when she yearns to be touched and loved. When two young men from town become intrigued by her wild beauty, Kaya opens herself to a new life until the unthinkable happens. So I think that is a pretty solid synopsis of what it looks like in the book. It definitely gives you that very broad, overarching view, but does not even, picking up this book, it was one of those books where I thought, this is cool, this is great, and then all of a sudden you get to the end and it's like, oh.
Yep.
Oh. So, of course, we start off with this Marsh family. So it starts off with giving it a little bit of backstory where the marshes are not necessarily places that people want to live. So you can go out to the marsh and you can just kind of set up camp, essentially, is what a lot of people did. This is back in the 50s, thank you. This is way back in the 50s where people could just set up camp, and then it was on the side of a river, and then you figured it out. You figured out how the tides worked and where you could get stuff. And it was all cheap at that point. Like it was cheap land and you could build it cheap and you could live in it cheap. But so it starts off with this family. There's a mom, there's a dad, and I think there's at least 5 or 6 siblings.
Yeah.
5 or 6 kids.
Older brother, 2 older sisters, and then the youngest too.
Yeah. So it starts off by just kind of talking about this family, and they live in this one little bungalow shack is kind of what you could call it. Oh, to pair with this book, by the way, we have a very nice little Pat O'Brien's Hurricane cocktail. Found it on Pinterest. It's actually pretty darn good. It's slightly modified because it asks for passion fruit juice or puree, and I can't find that where I live. So I modified it ever so slightly. So instead of a puree and an orange juice, it is a mango passion fruit orange juice. But very dangerous, and I will make these again.
If we get really giggly at the end, it's the drinks.
Duh. So back to this. So we start off with this family that has. I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I read this book. I think I read it last summer, but from what it started with, it starts off with this man and his wife end up finding a deed, or they are granted a deed from a long lost family member for this marsh property. Now, if anyone knows what a marsh is, it is quite literally the most, it's the toughest environment for anything to thrive in unless you have adapted to thrive in it. But so it starts off with this family. They move there. They have kids. And they're all pretty content there for the most part. But then all of a sudden, it becomes very obvious that the dad is down on his luck. He's gone to hit the bottle and he's drinking a lot more. And when he goes and he hits the bottle, he also starts hitting his family. So, sad commentary, but that kind of makes the mom pack her stuff and leave. And at this point, our main character, Kaya, is 3, I think. She's really, really young. But she remembers this, and she remembers, oh, yeah, I had a mom. I have a vague memory of her. And of course, she has 4 older siblings at this point. And her older siblings are in their teens by that point. So there's...
Well, her brother was like 7, but everyone else was older.
Yes, the one closest to her is 7. I think she was 3, and then everyone else was like spread apart about the same. So the oldest one might have been 16 at that point. Yeah. I can't remember specifics. I don't think they ever mentioned it either. But so we get the one scene, and this is one scene that like kind of sticks with me even after all this time. It's the girl sees her mom. She's got her bag packed and her snakeskin heels, and she is walking down this dirt road path away from their house, and she's calling after her, "Ma, Ma, where are you going? Ma." And I think what they did a really good job in the movie of showing the mom's anguish as she's walking away, where she's like, you can tell she hears her child calling for her, but it takes everything in her to not turn around, because she knows that as soon as she turns around, she's going back. Yeah. And she just can't. She can't take her child with her. She can't do any of it. And I'm like, oh, it's heartbreaking. But then, of course, soon after the mom leaves, then the oldest sibling leaves, and then the next one. Because as soon as the mom leaves, of course, dad's punching bag is gone. Hits the bottle harder. And then, of course, it's the oldest sibling gets the brunt of it, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then the brother who's 7. And I think this lasts for at least a little while, where she is just, where it's just the constant, like, everyone is leaving, everyone is doing whatever they want to do, everyone's just going. And of course, the 7-year-old is the one who stays the longest. Hi, I hear you.
Welcome to having shepherds.
Oh, gracious. So mouthy. But so this, of course, the brother is the one who is closest to Kaya, and doesn't really want to leave her. Not that he wants to leave his dad either, but he really doesn't want to leave his sister. And there's no way that a 7-year-old can take care of a 3-year-old either. So this lasts for a little while, but then he's the last one to leave and kind of gives her those parting words of, do what you can, kid.
Yeah.
Like, he very reluctantly leaves because he's like, I don't want to leave my sister, but I can't stay here and I can't take you with me. So after everyone leaves, it kind of, like, the dad kind of settles down a little bit, kind of is trying to teach his daughter a little bit. Like, there is a very short amount of time where it seems like, oh, he's sober. He can teach his daughter how to fish because she learned how to use the motorboat. She learned how to do all those things where it's like she learned the marsh. And of course the marsh is ever changing, and it's all those little winding paths where it's like you can easily get lost.
Yeah.
If you do not know where you need to go in a boat, you're going to get lost in the marsh. So it almost seems like, oh, this could work for a little bit. But then all of a sudden, the dad up and leaves. Like, we really don't, and of course he would be away for a while because he would go and he would gamble, and then he would win a lot, and then he would drink a lot, and then he would gamble some more, and blah, 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 blah. But then all of a sudden, Kaya's all alone, and she's maybe 5 or 6 at this point, I think. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but this is also at the point where she's like maybe a 1st or 2nd grader.
Yeah.
At aged. Mm-hmm. And then DCS comes and like picks her up and says, "Oh, you need to come and be a part of school. School is the place for you.
You can have a warm meal.
You can have a nice warm meal." So of course that's like something that's so intriguing for a kid who has tried to learn to cook for herself, but all she can cook is like
grits.
Gruel. It's gruel. Because like grits is cheap, so she doesn't know anything else. It's like that's all she was ever taught how to cook as a 4-year-old. But so she goes to school, and I think I remember them saying that she goes to school for a morning. Like, it's not even a full day, it's a morning. Because of course, Kaya is a kid who doesn't have shoes. She doesn't have clean clothes. She probably has outgrown everything that she already owns. And
can't spell.
It can't even sound out words. Mm-hmm. She has no education whatsoever, and no one's ever read to her because it's the marsh. Their description of the marsh people is they are uneducated, they're dumb, and they do it the way they want it. Mm-hmm. In many sense of the words, yes, this is exactly what the marsh people do. So she goes and then she runs away. She runs away from school, and the DCS people keep coming back, and then she runs into the swamp. And of course, the DCS people are not going to go and look for her in the marsh because she knows the marsh. She grew up in the marsh. She was born in the marsh. That child could find her way back to her house by the age of 7 as it was, because she knew exactly where she was going. She knew exactly what she needed to do. There was no question about it.
Yeah.
So eventually DCS kind of gives up and says, whatever, throwing her hands up, not a big deal. And then it goes through her kind of trials and tribulations of trying to figure out, how is she going to take care of herself? How is she going to get herself food and clothes when she's growing and getting older? So, and the only thing she knows how to do is she knows how to drive a motorboat at 7 again. She's really, really little. Like, hi, I'm 30 and I don't know how to drive a boat. Yes. It's like, kudos to Kaya here. Yeah. But, of course, this is like one of those small Louisiana towns anyways where everybody knows everybody. So, like, word gets around. You see people, you hear things. Mm-hmm. I think that was one thing about the movie, though, that bothered me, is they did not depict that school scene and her absolute fear of going to school. Because as soon as she went to school, like, her teacher asked her to spell a word. It was like cat or something, super simple. It was dog or God. It was like one of those, and she spelled. Oh, she spelled it backwards.
Yeah.
Yes, they asked her to spell dog, and she spelled God. That's exactly what it was. And so like, I don't think the movie, like, that was a fear. That's a really very real fear.
They showed embarrassment, but they didn't show her being terrified.
Right. Right, exactly. So that was kind of, I was a little disappointed in that with the movie, but you know, I know you can only fit so much in such a short period of time. But anyway, so she starts, like, she tries to do some, like, fishing, and she makes salt fishes, and then there's
Mussels.
was it oh, it was the mussels. There was mussels too. There was the fish, the little itty bitty fish, and then the mussels were another one. And so that was kind of how, and so she took all of these things to the local boat launch to jump in. I love Jumpin'. I know, he was great. And of course, this was back in the 50s again, where racism was huge. It was out of control. And of course, this is the Deep South. So
well, that's what, like, that was actually one of my points, is like, I like how Jumpin' and Mabel, like, despite how people of color were treated during this time period, from what we've learned, pretty freaking terrible, they were portrayed very respectfully and really highly regarded. I mean, granted, you have the Marsh Girl and then you have people of color, but
I was about to say, I feel like the Marsh people were just above those people of color.
Yeah.
And it was only because you're white.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Right. So it was just really, like, refreshing to see the organic portrayal of how people interact without the societal standards of, this person's black. You can't treat them kindly. They were just adults to her.
Yeah. And of course, like, Kaya, again, does not understand those social aspects. She was never brought up to be like, this is a black person, they are bad. This is a white person, they are good. It was never that type of situation, because she didn't have people to teach her ever at all. Jumpin' and Mabel were the biggest teachers, parent figures that she ever had, because, and I think that was another thing that the book did that the movie really didn't, is she would go as this young child, 7, 8 years old, bring these awful smoked fish, and it was awful. It was like alrighty, Miss Kaya, we'll see what we can do. But then Jumpin' would go and tell Mabel, like, we got to figure something else out, because this kid can't do this.
Yeah.
It was that very accurate portrayal of, I really want to help this kid. She's not just going to take a handout. So this is what I'll give her, and I'm not going to sell this because no one's going to buy it. It was really interesting the way they did that. And so, of course, as we keep going through this story, then there's also the people that, well, like, are they like the hoity-toities of the town.
Gosh. Yeah. Remember that little girl that went up and said hi, and Kaya was about to say hi back, and the mom, like, dragged her away, being like, that's the Marsh Girl, we don't associate with them. I'm like, fuck off.
It's awful. It is awful. But, like, that was the time where a lot of kids don't know any better. Kaya doesn't go into town because of that reason specifically. But then there was also the people that, so again, this book starts and it jumps back and forth in time. So it'll start by introducing this family in the 50s, and then it'll jump forward to the
quote unquote present day of the 60s.
Yeah, it's the present day of the 60s is exactly what it is. So it jumps like 10, 20 years ish. Because then we have this murder investigation of this young man who is, like, I guess the comparison of the quarterback of the football team, the captain of the hockey team, the mayor's child, like all of these comparisons. And that is this kid. He is the most popular at school. He gets everything that he wants, and his parents never tell him no, and all of these things. And he's perceived as the golden child. So he sucks. But so he gets, and so it's like, but of course you don't realize how much he sucks until like most of the way through the book, when it's like the jump back, jump forward, jump back, jump forward, jump back, blah, 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 blah. But he's the one who ends up getting murdered in the beginning of this book. So we know he's murdered, we just don't know why he's murdered. But of course, when he gets murdered, it's Kaya's fault. It's that darn Marsh girl's fault. And so she's currently in the present day, quote unquote, is where she's kind of fighting her legal battle with the state of Louisiana. Or yeah, Louisiana. Where the crowd is.
North Carolina.
North Carolina. It says it right there, Alexa. It's North Carolina.
That's
North Carolina. I know. I always think it's always like Louisiana or something because it's like it's just such deep south.
Yeah.
But like North Carolina is deep, deep south. But I always think anyway, regardless, moving on. Moving on. So when we jump back and forth, it's the legal battle and everyone blaming Kaya and trying to get her story. And then it's Kaya trying to figure out how the hell she's going to live without a family. So it follows her from the time that she is on her own at 7 years old, I think is when her dad officially leaves and kind of like dips out for forever. And do we ever figure out what happens? I can't remember.
No.
Okay, we never figure out what happens. That's what I figured.
Bothers the shit out of me.
It's very little bothersome. It's like, did you get out? Did you just up and leave? Did you die somewhere in a hole? We hope so, I think.
Well, that was one of my questions. Like, did he drunkenly fall into the marsh and drown? Did he go to the bar and drink himself to death? Did he go somewhere else and make a new drunken life?
Did he owe someone money and they just killed him?
Yeah.
Because he was doing all this gambling?
Like, what the hell happened? And I thought the same thing with the siblings, too. Like, we fortunately learned about the mom, but...
And the brother.
Yeah, so the brother
and the brother
comes
that's closest,
back.
yep.
But I'm like, what about the other three?
Yeah.
That bothered me.
I know. I like having those loose ends never sits well with me, kind of. It's like, wait, I need to know the end of this story, though.
Yeah.
I need to figure out what happened here. But so... Anyway, in every story, there must be this wonderful person that is willing to help our friend along in her journey. So Jumpin' is obvious. Jumpin' and Mabel are both two very important people to Kaya. They basically grew up as her mother father figures, where they find her clothes and get her gas. They basically give her money. Where it's like they run a business. They can't just afford to give money to a small child, but they do. And it's amazing to me that it's like there are good people in this world. There are the Chase Andrews, who are the golden child douche canoes of North Carolina. And then there's the Jump-ins, who really truly just want to help out this poor child who is completely lost in the marsh by herself and has no education, has no idea how to do anything. And then there is our wonderful, I had to find his name. I can't remember his name. Tate. What's his last name? I can't remember. Tate. Tate is...
Did they even say his last name?
Yes. I know they said his last name because they talk about his dad.
I thought that was another nickname like Jumpin' was.
No. Yeah, so Jumpin' and Mabel are Jumpin' and Mabel, but then there's Tate and his dad.
Yeah.
Tate is another, he's not necessarily a marsh kid, but his dad owns a shrimping boat.
Yeah.
And so he helps his dad out with his shrimping boat. And that was another funny little tidbit that I thought, where his dad likes to sing, like opera, right? Isn't that what it was?
I don't remember the singing part. I just remember him being super supportive of Tate, being like, you have your focus with school.
He was super supportive. He was awesome. But like, he was one of those people where I feel like if you put him in a trivia situation, he would know every single answer to every single question. He was just that type of dude where he didn't necessarily use those skills the way that everyone else does, where it's like, I know everything. He was like, no, I'm just going to do my job, but I know these things. Very, very down to earth. But so Tate, this wonderful, wonderful human, is about the age of the next older brother who left very early. But so Tate, we figure out, would come over and would play with the older brother in the marsh by the boat and actually defended Kaya at least once from her dad's wrath and his drunken stupor and stupidness. And he's kind of the one that literally taught her everything that he could. And the way he did it was incredible too, because she was a very jumpy child. Of course, she's like, I'm going to run away from all authority. I'm running away from adults. Nobody wants me here. So I'm going to do what I can do, and I'm going to hide from everyone else because nobody wants me anyways. Yeah. And they're going to put me in a foster home or some type of awful situation where I don't want to be. Mm-hmm. And so Tate has to be very tactful about that and like leave a feather here. But of course, in her whole experiences, she knows she's starting to learn the marsh. She's starting to learn the animals of the marsh.
Very good with that.
So the whole experience for her is like, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to, oh, this is a shell I've never seen before. Oh, I've never seen that feather before. And then we'll like look for them. So she will have all this different assortments of butterflies and feathers and shells. And at some point she can say, this is to this animal and this is to this animal. And her and Tate kind of do like the swap back and forth. And that's how he gains her trust back in in her early tween years. Like I think it's like 10 to 13 or something.
It was before she got her period.
It was before she got her period. So, but again, she's eating like gruel. Yeah. She's eating gruel. She's literally trying to like just live off the land as much as she can. So, and she's a skinny little thing, but even though she's like really, really skinny, she's of course still growing. So she's still growing out of everything because everything is too short. But that's kind of where he's been trying to gain her trust, is they will swap feathers back and forth. And they like, it's like they put a feather in a stump, or they put a shell on the same stump, and then they watch and they wait for the other person. Yeah. And that's kind of how they've started to form their bond and their friendship at such a young age. And then, and so it turns into Tate teaches her how to read. And Tate has a lot bigger, he has a lot bigger dreams than being a shrimp boat captain. He respects his father for what he does, but he's totally one of those, I'm going to go and I'm going to be
you want to be a biologist.
A marine biologist, I think. So he wants to be a marsh marine biologist. And so he's working his tail off for his dad. He's working his tail off in school. And he's helping Kaya learn how to read and write and do all those things. And it's really interesting to kind of watch their relationship form into such a nice little bond where they just kind of fit together nicely. So fast forward. And then it goes into, I'm still like doing the flashback, and I'm just kind of like thinking chronologically at the moment. Yeah. So, because the flipping back and forth, just, I love the writing style. I just cannot speak it. Oh, yeah. I will get lost in my own thoughts. Hard. Yeah. So she's kind of like on her own. She's still doing the thing where she's getting up early. She's collecting mussels. She's bringing them to Jumpin'. Jumpin' and Mabel are giving her clothes and money to try and do all these things. And then she's also learning how to read. And then she's also developing into a young woman. Mm-hmm. So it's about, I think she's about 16, maybe 17 years old at this point. And she goes in, and Chase Andrews, the charming fellow that he is kind of like bumps into her at Jumpin's place. And of course he walks in thinking he owns the place, and this is I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna put this on my dad's card, and my dad will pay for that. My mom will pay for that. Yeah. Just like jackwagon, straight up jackwagon. But of course, like no one says no to Chase Andrews. Yeah. So he sees Kaya, and he's like trying to goad her almost. Yeah.
Well, don't forget, she's heartbroken because Tate went off to school.
Not yet.
Maybe I'm thinking of it.
I was going to say it's also, no, it might be.
Yeah, because her heart's broken, and she agrees to go on a date with him because Tate says, I'll be back for 4th of July. I have to go to school. I got a job in the lab this summer. I'll be back for 4th of July. And he kind of did, but he never came back to her. So she's heartbroken, and that's when she agrees to go on that date with Chase.
But I thought she was still doing the schooling stuff with Tate, and then Chase is almost like chasing her. Okay,
He
again,
sees
it's
the
been a long time.
Yeah.
It's
No,
been a
it's all
long
good.
time.
I
So
just read it like last week.
I was
So.
gonna say, Chase sees the opportunity and kind of like jumps on it. So
Yeah.
and I guess that makes sense because Tate is at least 4 years older than Kaya. So he gives her all of these books, like all of his all of his old
Yeah.
textbooks. He just he brings them to her and she just studies them all day. And of course, like she already knows all these animals because it's like, and of course the marsh, and they mentioned this, which I thought was really cool. It's like the marsh doesn't really have a great stockpile of knowledge. Like the people, there are not people that have put all of the marsh knowledge into one book. Like there are plenty of people that put the ocean into a book and mountain ranges and forests and rainforests and all of these things, but no one has really explored the marsh and the animals that live there.
And the books that are published are inaccurate.
And they are inaccurate. That was the biggest thing too. So Kaya's big project that she starts working on as soon as she can read and she understands everything, she ends up being that author that accurately draws all of the animals and the shells and all of the plants and all the animals. She's the one who gives them their proper scientific names.
Yeah.
And accurately draws all their stages of life. And so I'm like, you went from a kid who could not spell dog and never went back to school a day in your life. You are now speaking in scientific terms. And I'm like, that's wicked cool. Obviously not accurate, but like amazing that's where life brought you. Like, yes, this, like the marsh is your home. The marsh is your happy place. And you were able to take that happy place and completely transform it into something that became like a huge success for her in the end. That was huge for her. So because she did all the drawings and all the paintings and she had all these specimens, and by the end of the book, she had her house filled with specimens,
shelves and shelves and shelves,
everything, all the things. So of course her and Tate have created this bond together with all their schooling that they've done together and all the things that she learned from him. And then he goes off to school. Very understandably, we get it. Got to go to school, got to do better because you want to do better. And so he says, I'm going off to school. I have this break coming up. I have that break coming up. And I am working in a lab. And so she waits, which I'm like, I understand. Good for you. But then it's like he doesn't actually come back.
Yeah.
And it's not like she keeps a calendar, so it's not like she truly understands, like, I'll be back in July. But she knows well enough at this point that when July comes, it's hot all the time. The marsh acts like this. These people are around. I hear this, this, and this. So she's like, okay, so I know he's not here anymore. Why is he not here anymore? And then as we go to jump-ins, so this is where I got confused. So as she goes to jump-ins, lovely Chase Andrews kind of approaches her. And of course, she's never really actually talked to another person besides Tate for a long time. Because she doesn't really go into town unless it's to buy
food,
the most necessary basic food. And I think she gets all of that from Jump-In.
Yeah.
So Jump-In, Mabel, Tate. That's her social circle.
Well, she got some stuff from the Piggly Wiggly, but I think it was everything that she couldn't get at Jump-Ins, she'd go there.
Right.
And then that woman at the register was telling her how to count coins.
Yes, I forgot about that. I totally forgot about that. So it's like there are still some good people in this world. But of course, like this is also like small town living. So everybody knows everybody. So Chase Andrews, Mr. Nobody Tells Me No, immediately approaches Kaya. And of course, she's 16, 17 at this point. So she's developed and she's getting prettier. And she's learning to take like better hygiene care of herself.
Yeah.
It's definitely been one of those like, yeah, as a small child, you're stinky. Like, what child is not stinky? And then as you grow and you evolve, you realize, oh yeah, I do need to like take care of myself because it's healthier for my body and for me. So, and of course, being 16, 17, hormones start raging.
Yeah.
So of course she's like, oh my gosh, Chase Andrew, the most popular. Like, even her, who lives in the marsh, is like,
well, she felt that for Tate, too. But Tate was like, I'm not going to go all the way. That's not right.
No,
And
no,
Chase
exactly.
was like, fuck it.
Well, yeah. Like, Tate kind of had the long-term goal in his head where he said, I need to go and do school. I need to do all the things right first. I can't not do the right thing.
Yeah.
So he goes off to school, does his thing, and then Chase comes into the picture, and it's weird. It's like he almost seemed sweet to me at one point. He almost seemed like he actually cared. But of course, being the most popular person with the political parents and the uptight community, it was like it could never happen. Because I remember at one point in the book, Kaya goes into town and she sees Chase. And this is after they've been hanging out for a little while. And he's like, oh, Kaya, you're the best person ever. I wish more people were like you. You're so down to earth. But it's like, you can't actually say any of that for yourself.
Yeah.
You are not a good person because you cannot say that.
Yeah.
Like, you can say that all you want, but if you're not going to change it for yourself, why the fuck are you saying any of that? So, of course, he, like, fills Kaya's heads with all these delusions of grandeur. We're going to get married and everyone is
going to 2-story house.
And we're not going to care what anyone else says. She goes into town and, of course, she finds him with some other girl who has pearls around her neck, and all of a sudden in the paper 2 weeks later it's, oh, him and Miss Pearls are gonna get married and they're engaged. Right. And then of course they meet again, and
he essentially tries to rape her.
He assaults her.
Yeah, and she's like, fuck off. But I think it's also important to remember that, like, they traveled to another town so he could go shopping for his parents' auto business. And that's where they have sex for the first time, because he starts talking about marriage with her. And that's the only reason why she let herself have sex with him, was because she's like, we're going to get married. And then after she breaks her virginity with him, that's when he's like, oh yeah, I'm engaged.
Oh yeah, and it's like
the balls to tell her, but
well, exactly. And then of course it's, Kaya, please, like, listen to me. Yeah. I want everything, and I can't have everything. I'm a great big baby. Yes, you too, Coda. But so, of course, we like go into the future, and he of course marries Miss Pearls, whatever. But
he's known for, like, having affairs.
He has affairs all over town because, of course, he is, I want everything right now because I'm the best, obviously. And, of course, it's just cover up after cover up for his parents, because he is still, like, a political, I think he is actually, like, a political figure, or at least high up in the food chain in that town.
Yeah, very high up in the chain.
Either way, he's high up in the chain of command kind of thing. And so it's just, even as he's married, it's cover up after cover up after cover up after cover up. And then, hey, I'm going to sexually assault Kaya. And then it's okay, I'm going to go and move on with my life. But it's like, Kaya can't move on from that.
Yeah.
She really cannot move on from that, because that's devastating to her.
Yeah.
So, of course, she's still like, she's finally made a book deal. I think.
Well, it was Tate
I was about to say Tate.
Resources.
Yeah. So as she's making all these things, it's like Tate comes back and sees her for a hot minute and gives her all these resources and the names of these people, and she's starting to make a book deal for herself.
But then the developers come in.
And that's where she finds the actual deed for her land and says, no, you can't have this space. Well, this is mine.
Oh, yeah. Because it was her grandfather that owned the property, and with the way things fell apart with her family, property was hers, but she had to pay the back taxes.
Yes.
And she had the money for the back taxes
from the book deal. Yes, that's exactly what it was. And so it worked out. And it's like, and it wasn't a lot, obviously,
800,
but
which in that time was probably a lot.
It was a lot, but still, that's over 80 years.
Yeah.
So that was a nice little, like, I can make this work.
Yeah.
And then, of course, she's just doing her book thing, and she's making more books and blah, 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 blah. So anyway, so now let's jump into our quote-unquote present day, where she is now currently on trial for murder. this murder of Chase Andrews, this very prominent figure in this teeny tiny town of North Carolina. And like the lawyer makes a great case for her. It is amazing, the case.
She was at this hotel. She was that close to the bus because she had to walk.
Oh my gosh. But it was like in his final argument. And so of course they're making this argument. And I think the brother comes back into town at this point.
Because he sees her books.
To support her. So it's like, oh, these are your books. This is so cool. And then unfortunately we find out that their mom was looking for everyone.
She had a mental breakdown and forgot she had kids until a year later. And she's like, oh shit.
I have children.
Her mom sent Dad a letter. The only word Kaya could read was her name.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
The envelope didn't have her name on it.
And that's what sent the dad back into his drinking spiral, because that's why he was sober for so long. It was like everyone had left and he could figure out how to be a dad, and then all of a sudden the mom sent a letter.
She wanted the kids.
And she wanted the kids. And of course the dad went just spiraling downhill again and ended up probably in a ditch somewhere.
Yeah.
Or the marsh ate him. Seriously, like, oh my gosh, you go anywhere in the marsh and you stay there for long enough, you are done. They will never find your body in a marsh.
Yeah.
It is amazing marshes, because of course that's the combination of the salt water and the fresh water. So that is a very harsh environment for anything to live in. So in this trial, it's of course going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it's like her argument is that she was almost 2.5 hours away. Yeah, Greenville. I think it's 2.5 hours away from the beach from where she lived. And she was with her publisher trying to make a book deal. And so it's like she was at this hotel. Why was she at this hotel? It's right next to the bus. And it's like, yeah, she doesn't have a car. She doesn't drive. But so there was all these arguments that were made. And then finally at the very end, like everyone is convinced that, I don't know if everyone is convinced, but like everyone is pretty much like, so in the beginning, everyone obviously thinks it's Kaya, because you blame the one who is easiest to blame.
Yeah.
And the big argument that was made was his necklace, because that was kooky too.
Yeah.
Is Kaya made a necklace for him, and he wore it
Every
from the time he was 16 years old till when he died at
whatever age,
20-something, 30-something, whenever it was.
Yeah. Either way.
Either way, every single day as he was married and having affairs and causing mischief and mayhem. And so the report says he climbed up this fire tower and he fell off of it. So it's like, it's a fire tower. It's 2 or 3 stories high.
Yeah. Well, then they're also saying that the kids moved the grates on it, so he could have fallen through.
Yeah, so it's like it wasn't secured off.
Yeah.
It like local law enforcement needs to check that more often and blah 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 blah.
Well,
it's like, yes, we can do all of those.
The Park Service to say you need to fix this because someone's going to get really hurt or they're going to die.
So, and I love this ending argument that the lawyer makes, because they've kind of set the scene for all of the things that must have happened. So apparently there was a point where, like, obviously Kaya was at a different hotel than her publisher, but it was right next to the bus station. Yeah. But the argument was because it's right next to the bus, of course, she has to walk to the bus and she has to walk home. And it's like there was one bus at this time, and it was, the lawyer made such a good argument. And I'm like,
yes.
It's like all of these things would have had to have lined perfectly. Yeah. She would have had to have catch the bus at the perfect time. She would have had to had a pretty convincing disguise because nobody saw her. She would have had to have run, like sprinted as fast as she could to the spot to meet Chase Andrews, to her boat, excuse me. And she would have had to have had the perfect tide with the perfect undercurrent to be able to pull this off, to then be able to get back into town, run to the bus, get back on the bus for this time because there was no other bus, to be back in her hotel room. Basically painted the picture of these things are not all possible to have happened. Absolutely freaking impossible. There's no way all of these things lined up so perfectly. And then, of course, like the happy ending is Kaya is let off. She continues writing her books. She marries Tate, which
Well,
I was
it's the
like,
common law marriage.
it's yeah. So they didn't necessarily get married, but they lived together. It maintained that wonderful relationship that they had, and they just kind of existed together.
Yeah.
They were just the perfect little Marsh couple, where he continued to do research at the lab that was recently built by the developers, that she was able to stay in her house. And then
his dad passed away.
And then, well, so his dad passed away, I thought, when he was in college, though.
No, it was right after the trial, because the sheriff's office approached him, and she was approaching them, and she was like, wait, is he getting arrested for the murder? And then that's when his dad died.
That's right.
And then Jumpin' died.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so sad. Well, and so, of course, like, it goes on and on, but the big happy story is that she ends up with Tate. She ends up free. She ends up not in jail, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, as she gets later in life and she has her house full of all these specimens, she gets old, she passes away. And then, but like her and Tate have been living in this house that's been her house since she was born. And it was like the wood by the wood stove was stacked up and was empty at one point. And he noticed that a board was loose. This is after Kaya had passed, like just after Kaya had passed. And he lifts up the floorboard and he sees an orange hat, right?
I don't remember the hat, but it was the box.
It was the box. It was the box with the necklace in it.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like that really good last, fuck you, I made it. I did not do I did it and none of you knew, and because he sucked as a human.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
Yeah, that got me.
Yes.
But also, she would, throughout the book, I don't think as much so during the movie, but in the book, she would, like, quote these poems by this author, and he was like, she's okay, but it's not great, and he learns Kaya was that author.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's right.
I was like, holy shit.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That was wild. So that was the big synopsis of the book. Huge spoiler right there, so...
Yep. Well, let me tell you, you like to give me books to read that are mind fucking with my emotions.
I'm not sorry.
But no, every time like a family member would leave, my heart was like, But here's another random detail. Like, there are a few random details that really bothered me. One was there's no coverage of her brushing her teeth or any teeth issues.
No.
So it's like common hygiene where if you don't maintain it can be a problem. Nothing. And I'm like, they covered her period and how like gentle that was, but why don't they cover like the other essential stuff? I don't know. It was just me being weird. And then I kept reminding
too hard about it.
But then I also had to like keep reminding myself what year it was, because the dad would be like, here's $1 that'll last you the week, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's the 50s.
Yes,
and they're poor.
I could literally get grits for 10 cents.
Yeah, like it's nuts.
A big bag of grits for 10 cents, yeah.
So here's my question. Could you live off of grits almost every day of your life?
Probably not. Especially because, like, grits done right are good. But you got to get the butter and all the other shit you add in there. And she didn't have any of that. That was literally just...
seafood and grits and eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If she could find them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that.
No.
I mean, I guess that's a true testament of how poor she was with no other options.
Yeah.
Did you ever wonder exactly what happened to Tate's mom and sister, like specifics about the car accident?
No, I don't think it was that. I don't think I ever got that specific. If someone told me it was a car accident, I'd just be like,
okay.
like, that's awful. That's terrible. Yeah. I really don't need to know the specifics of all that. Yeah. It's kind of like thinking about any death or traumatic incident where I'm like, even if it like, especially if it's a rape or a sexual assault, I'm like, I don't need to know the specifics of that. Yeah. You can just tell me that, and I can let my imagination run a little bit with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was sad too.
Did you ever wonder why Tate never actually like pushed her to get legally married? It was just kind of like, Or even like a small ceremony at the marsh. It was like, we're married just like the geese are. Okay.
I think it's a testament to their level of happiness with each other. Like, there are some couples that you can ask them and they can say, we've been living together for 20 something years. We're very happy. Why would we get married? And there are like, I feel like there are a lot of people like that sometimes that just are like, I don't see the reason in getting married and saying the state now knows I'm married. Like, this is the person that I love. This is the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. Why do I need a piece of paper to say that?
I mean, I think I know of a couple that's been together for 30 years and never got married.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, oh, I wonder.
Yeah.
Let's see. So another point I had was Jody obviously came back and like post the trial, like they did bond and all of that. But do you wish that the other siblings came back as well?
No, I thought it was really nice that it was just the one brother who was closest to her in age that kind of they had a closer bond than the other siblings, because the other siblings were just so much older than they were. So I think it's great that they were able to go and get out and do what they needed to do with the rest of their lives. I'm not necessarily of the mindset where I need to know what happened specifically, but I mean, even just thinking they're happy.
Yeah.
They made it somewhere in this world away from the horribleness of what their father provided for them.
I kind of wish like there had been some flashpoint to like, this is where this sibling went and this is where that sibling went, and like just that closure for me. I was like, can I have some closure, please? Yeah, so that tail end, I'm not gonna lie, I was totally in the bathtub one night reading it.
Good for you.
So I was literally sobbing reading the last page. Well, reading the last few pages, and then boom, the discovery of her being the murderer. All the tears stopped, and I was like,
she fucking did it!
What the fuck?
Well done, bitch! Well done!
Yeah, I was like, Alexa! But I was also like, I gotta wait until this before I say anything.
Oh my gosh, it was wild.
It was nuts.
Oh my, and it's like, and I didn't really even see it coming.
Oh,
like there was, but it's like, that's the thing. Now that I think back on it, it's like, she had all of these things that lined up so perfectly. That kind of shows how well she knew the marsh.
Absolutely.
It's like, no one else could have done that. Yeah. No one else could have pulled that off the same way that she did, but because she knew every inch and how that marsh would react to this situation at this time with this moon and this tide, I was like, you could not have done that more perfectly.
No. Well, that was the other point. Was their argument was like she didn't leave a trail. But I'm also like, yeah, she learned not to leave a trail because she was running away from the truancy officer her entire childhood. So like she knew what I need to do to not show my presence whatsoever. And then of course I had to watch the movie because, well, duh. Yes. So I thought like the beginning was pretty accurate, other than spending more time showing Jody trying to make things work. I was kind of like hoping we could bond with him a little bit more, but it is what it is. I also noticed in the movie the writers were nicer than they could have been, since it took the dad, like that was actually part of it, was he was in the service. He was like a World War II veteran.
Yeah.
And it took for him to go and get his check because he was like, something's wrong with my check. I'll be back in 3 to 4 days. Mm-hmm. But it took until he came back from that to be nice. Mm-hmm. Like they totally missed all that. I'm like, they could have been so much meaner.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how I felt about the arrest of Kaya happening in the beginning of the movie. Like, it, not just for the purpose of following the book, but like my husband Eric, he just didn't know the story, and he was so confused. And his question was, well, why are they holding her accountable? And I go, you just gotta keep watching. Like, you'll find out.
I know, and that's it, and that, yeah.
I didn't think that was all that well thought out. Because if someone who hasn't read the book first gets really confused, like, that's not the strongest start, in my opinion.
But I think it's also that grab that people want. So as soon as you see someone getting arrested, most people think, why is that person getting arrested?
Yeah.
What did they do? What's the accusation? Who did what? and then they're immediately invested, where it's like, I need to watch this now so that I figure out what happens. Is she actually convicted? Did she actually do it? The whole 9 yards type of thing.
It is a hook. Yeah,
And I think that's the only thing, is like, it's a hook. And I get where they're coming from, where especially where Eric is coming from, where he's saying, wait, why are they holding her accountable? It's like, put yourself in the 60s in North Carolina, in a marsh.
Yeah.
In a small town, marsh town.
Yeah. I'd also wish that they had incorporated Kyra's entry into womanhood. Like, I kind of wish they had done that. Like, it doesn't need to be graphic by any means, but, like, for Mabel to tell her, like, hey, like, if you're feeling weird, you can always come to me. And Kyra's like, I'm feeling weird.
Yeah. It's like just that realization of, because they really didn't depict that well. It was just kind of, she's growing, she's getting taller, she's needing clothes, she's doing this, that, the other thing. But it was never the transition of, you are now a woman.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I agree. I think that could have at least been touched on. Like, that's a quick scene of, I wake up, we see, like, blood in a toilet or something.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. Yeah.
They didn't even portray that.
No, yeah, right? like we really didn't see a lot of the inside of that house.
Yeah.
Like, until the specimens were all there, and she was older, and she had already made all of her collections and had fixed it up.
Yeah.
After everyone had left.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
and then Kaya attending Jumpin's funeral, like, that definitely wasn't accurate, because she didn't
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, so Jumpin passed away.
Right.
She didn't go to it because she doesn't like being around a lot of people. However, she did go to his house and hugged Mabel, and it was perfect because, like, in the book, it was the perfect portrayal of how her personality was, but in the book, it was like, she went to the church and everything. I'm like, creative licensing right there, not very accurate. But yeah, and then despite knowing the ending, I still cried. Like, that scene with her mom walking down the driveway, I was like, I had to grab a tissue. I was like, oh my God. I still, like, the way that they ended that of, come on, I was like, this is so fucking powerful. Destroyed me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, my overall review of the book is, this is still a must-read. Like, it's a story of resilience, hardship, and the need for human connection. Like, that just came through.
Yeah.
And then, also, not gonna lie, the actor who played Tate had really nice back muscles.
Yeah, he did. Oh, yeah, so that's
where the crawdads
That's where the crawdads sing. Do we want to introduce the next book now, and then you can dive into murder?
Well, let's do it at the very, very end, so
Okay.
we can end off with that. So, all right,
All right, you got a murder for us.
Yeah, ready to turn the page and go over to true crime? You ready to be all over the place?
Sure.
Okay.
We'll go with it.
So this is the unsolved murder of Rachel Morin.
Okay.
So when I started writing this story in January of this year, so 2024, there wasn't a lot of information, so I tried to focus on the known timeline and obviously any details related to the crime. Information gathering was obviously done through local news stories and a podcast that I happened to stumble upon. And then since then, within the last couple weeks, not gonna lie, as of the time of this recording, the Sheriff's Department released a podcast episode that brought this story to a whole new level. Oop, hold on, a phlegm in the throat.
I was about to say, when you texted me this past week, whenever it was, and you were like, major development in the case. I was like, oh, I cannot wait to hear this.
Oh, it's nuts. So shocking.
Where's this out of?
Well, I'll tell you.
Okay.
So shockingly, there was a lot of, you're good. There was a lot of misinformation that was part of the story. And that's like, when this recent development came through, I had to essentially like redo a lot of my story. And I was like, holy shit. So I am glad part of this episode was delayed a bit for those. I read Outlander. That's first book is 850 pages, and it was very long, and I've watched all the episodes, but holy shit, that was long. So anyway, here we go. On August 5th, 2023, around 5 p.m., 37-year-old Rachel Morin went for a run along the Ma and Pa Heritage Trail in Bel Air, Maryland. So for those like us that are not familiar with this area, this park is located in the northeast part of the state, close to the Pennsylvania border. From what I gathered about this trail from mapatrail.org and a podcast called Decipher Podcast, this is very similar to the new trail in our area that was converted from the train tracks to an actual path, but it's more city-like. So it's like such like a wooden area in the middle of buildings, essentially. So anyway, Rachel went out and never came back.
Okay.
So the next day, her body was found just off the trail about half a mile in. According to the Decipher podcast, her body was found in a place called Heavenly Waters. One of the hosts actually lives near where this happened, and she described the area as being really close to homes. So if someone was screaming, residents might have been able to hear her. And then the fun fact that I learned recently is the Harford, and that was the thing, is like we're used to Hartford, Connecticut. This is Harford. County sheriff also lives nearby. I was like, oh, it is a tiny community in a city type area. But I do also like to humanize victims. I like to give them more of a voice. So I did go digging into her childhood. And again, the amount of misinformation I initially found was actually really frustrating. So I had found at first that Rachel was one of 6 children who were homeschooled by her mother, Patty, in New Hampshire. However, according to the sheriff's podcast, this family is local to this area. So I'm like, what the fuck? This is like an important detail. Like, she's a local. Exactly. I mean, I think a lot of it's misinformation, but like, I'll get to that a little bit later. I didn't explore more about the homeschooling part as it doesn't really pertain to the actual story.
Sure.
But Rachel's mother described Rachel as a child who was sensitive, insecure, and actually stuttered until just a few years ago.
Okay.
However, these traits made her compassionate towards others, as she was a kid who was bullied and she was a bright light for those around her.
Okay.
As she got older, she did live modestly, and she claimed home and businesses for her work. She was one of those girls, unlike us, who as she got older, she mastered the art of hair and makeup and was stunning. Like, even without makeup, she was a fucking looker.
Good for her.
Fitness was a big part of her life, as she often participated in 5Ks and was a weightlifter. Like, some of those pictures, I was like, hot damn, girl, go for you. Like, that's amazing. So running the Ma and Pa Heritage Trail was practically on the daily for her. Like, that was her thing. She was also deeply involved in her church and faith. Perhaps most importantly, Rachel was the most loving and dedicated mother to 5 children.
Bless her soul.
I know, right? Due to her flexible schedule with cleaning homes and offices, if she had to be there for her kids, she was there. Like, she was dedicated. In searching for history in her relationships, I was able to find that she was married at one point, but that didn't last. And so between all of her children, there was more than one dad involved, which obviously we're not going to judge that whatsoever.
We're in a society right now where
That's common.
There are lots of people that have half siblings and step siblings. It's a thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason why I do mention this is, like, it'll come into play later on.
Right.
So how exactly her disappearance was reported to law enforcement was a little fuzzy. According to the articles I read, her boyfriend, Richard Tobin, reported her missing that same night around 11 when she never came home.
Okay.
However, the sheriff's office said that Rachel had left her 2 of her children at home. One of them is 18, and then the other one was a minor. So normally she'd come home within 45 minutes, and that did not happen. So that caused concern. So that's why the call was made. So with kind of these 2 different ways that the call was made, it wasn't clear to me who made the call, but I still think it's important to point it out. Like, things were fishy. According to the sheriff's office, when Rachel's car was found at the trailhead, that just didn't make sense to everyone. So the search began, and then her body was found the next day. The new important bit of information that the sheriff's office just released was that where her body was found, because that hasn't been released until obviously recently. I just said that. It was found and hidden in a culvert. Now, I mean, for us living in the mountains, we're used to winter, scrawny trees. We're used to summer and spring where foliage just goes boom and your visibility is down. So one of the deputies was like, I wasn't really privy to knowing, I didn't realize there was a culvert in this area. It's always hidden. So that's where her body
This
was.
is August, right?
Yes.
Okay, so everything is already ingrown. There's all the leaves are there. You would not be able to see 100 feet in front of you through the woods if you did not know anything was there.
Exactly.
Okay, that
if
makes
you
sense.
were very familiar with the area, you'd know the culvert was there. But like,
only if you decide to go in like bushwhack off trail.
Yeah, like just I mean, it's like that's part of the reason why, like that's a really important bit of information of how the suspect was able to do that.
Right.
So it's still unknown what the cause of death is.
Interesting.
Decipher podcast did say that the rumor mill is head trauma was involved, but the autopsy hasn't been released. I haven't been able to find any information. So obviously that's critical to the investigation. Yeah. I mean, you have to verify facts when you have like a suspect and all that.
Well, but like you would think that the autopsy would have been released so that they would know what the cause of death was in order to be able to prove something or other.
Well, I think they've been really tight-lipped.
Okay.
About a lot of stuff.
Okay.
So like
it's been less than a year, so that makes sense.
Yeah, it's been 6 months. Like it's nuts. So Rachel's boyfriend was quickly accused of the crime by those on social media. Usually. Shocker. Exactly. And that was like one of the things I found was they hadn't been dating for very long. Like they were Instagram, which we all know it's kind of bullshit. Like the timing can be whatever. Unless we're like in high school and we take that shit seriously.
I was about to say, like, high school is one thing, college, it's another thing.
Adulthood.
When you're into adulthood, if you're having Instagram relationships, you're most likely getting catfished. Sorry if that has offended anyone. I actually don't care, but it's like, seriously.
Yeah, don't
like,
at us. Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah. But he was put under fire, like, very, very intently. Web sleuths even went as far as claiming to uncover his criminal record in an effort to prove his guilt. Yeah.
Oh, God, I hate. Sometimes, like, yes, it very well could be the spouse, the boyfriend, the significant other, the whomever.
Yeah.
But I'm like, come on, guys. Like, take a chill pill. You are not investigators.
Yeah.
You are not actually, I mean, some of you might be, but it's like, why are you sticking your nose into this?
Yeah.
Why don't you just let the police department do what they're supposed to do? That's my feeling on it, where I'm like, why are you putting your 2 cents in? Nobody asked you to put your 2 cents in.
Well, I mean, have you ever seen Don't Fuck with Cats? No. So basically, it's web sleuths were able to like piece together the location of a guy who is brutally murdering cats on video and publishing it. That's why it says Don't Fuck with Cats, because all the cat lovers are gonna find where the fuck you are and take you down.
I mean,
so,
I support
like,
that choice.
Yeah. So like,
that's not right for any animal. That's awful.
Yeah. So like, I can understand like web sleuthing and trying to help figure out a crime and like bring in tips for law enforcement. But like you and I both have law enforcement in our family, so it's like we kind of see both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
But the Facebook stalker in me did find his profile and saw that most likely I think his record stems from an addiction. Like I couldn't figure out what his addiction was, but shocker, like a lot of people have that.
Some addiction is awful.
Yeah.
Any addiction is terrible.
Yeah. And so, like, when I did look in January, he claimed to be 15 months clean and has, quote, changed as a person. So I was like, good for you, dude. He even posted a certificate last September to show he completed the Harford County Circuit Drug Court program. So he's putting in the work to clean up his act.
So either way, in January, he will be a year and 3 months sober. That's still within the actual timeline of her murder. So that... Like, I feel like that's almost irrelevant, though. Like his drug addiction past is irrelevant, especially if he is 15 months clean.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that you're going to go and you're going to try and dig up everything you possibly can. But I'm like, that is irrelevant now.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they made bad choices. There is definitely something to be said about making those bad choices. But if they are trying to make their life better and they are saying they are clean for 15 months, bless.
Yeah.
Like, applaud them. Please. Do not try and demean them for the past shit. Like, fuck off.
Yeah.
That's my feeling on it.
Well,
Disagree with me if you want, but fuck off.
Well, we both have family members that we deeply care about where they're on a sobriety journey and we're like, fucking amazing. Like, I'm going to continue to support you. So, I mean, I have no judgments against him.
I don't know. I feel like it's something that seems to just be brought up. And it seems to be, because everyone has someone or themselves that they care about that has a problem, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's some other addiction.
Yeah.
Everyone has someone, and it just frustrates me that people keep bringing it up, and it's like they're clean.
Yeah.
They're sober.
Yeah, they may have a past, but it doesn't mean jack shit if they actually did anything.
It does not define them now.
Exactly.
So why are you bringing this?
Because people suck.
People do suck.
Yeah. And oh wait, I'm gonna make you go on a rant later.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna save my breath then.
So I will say he was cleared. Like, people were accusing him, and as an investigation goes, obviously he was interviewed and interrogated, and the police have cleared his involvement.
Okay.
So, however, on August 17th, 2023, there was a break in the case when the Harford County Sheriff's Office posted on their Facebook page virtual flyers containing a couple still images from a home security system. These images showed profile shots of a suspect.
Ooh.
But you notice how I said flyers?
Yes.
That's because there were two. Haha. Shocker. One in English and one in Spanish. Why Spanish? Because the footage was from a home security system in California.
Excuse fuck?
Yeah.
Excuse. No. We're in Maryland.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does is this a second home?
Mm-mm.
And the resident lives in Maryland? Or lives in California? Oh, so this person in California just thinks that they're going to help this case in Maryland by posting a flyer of something that's not even relevant.
Well, hold on.
No.
So the suspect that they have, footage from California. So to give a better visual, the camera is facing the road, like just one of those Ring doorbells, essentially.
Sure.
Facing the road, and the front door to the house was on the right-hand side of the screen. So, like, right-hand side for you.
Yep.
The images are from when the suspect was leaving the house and could easily hide a glimpse of the right side of his face. So it's just a profile.
Yep.
At the time of initially writing the story last month, my questions were, I don't know why they didn't show footage of him arriving. Maybe something happened to the video? Like, what the fuck? This is weird. These questions, my friend, just got answered.
Oh, gee.
That's why I was like, oh my God.
Okie dokie.
So let's go back to May 2023.
Okay.
We're in LA, and the suspect enters the home of an unsuspecting family and starts attacking a couple family members. My translation from this Harford County Sheriff's Department podcast is that these family members were minors.
Okay.
Another minor walked in on the attack. They took the suspect off guard and went into full-blown survival/defense mode.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to get the suspect out of the house, locked the door, and called the police. The reason why there's no footage of the suspect entering the home is because the suspect didn't enter through the front door.
Okay.
Information on how they entered has not yet been released. I also want to point out that many online have questioned, like, why wasn't 911 called when the attack was happening? But a good argument that was brought up by Maryland law enforcement is that the minor just wanted the attack to stop and to get the threat out of the home.
I'm sorry, but if you're being attacked in your home, I would think that all kids have been taught, you fucking call 911.
Well, I mean, it sounds like the adults weren't even aware of the attack going on. So, I mean, that's just a theory, but I do fully believed that the minor that walked in on the attack was like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know how old the minor was, because there's a reason why they're called a minor.
Obviously, it's like 17 and younger. So they could have been 17-year-olds and been like...
Yeah. And, like, keep in mind, this is still an active investigation, so there's a lot more details that we just don't know. And that's another thing where I'm like, ugh!
I'm sorry, but that's dumb.
Yeah.
Like, me personally, if someone broke into my house and I would be like, hi, police, I need someone to come here, like, now.
Well, I mean, if you're hiding, like, if things, like, are going downstairs, like, I honestly would hide and I'd call 911. But that's not the case of what happened. Like, they didn't know anything was going on and they walked in on the attack. So, I mean, everyone responds to an emergency situation different. I'm sure that differently. Like, I'm sure that we'll find out more as, like, the investigation unwraps.
Right, but, like, I would think that in that type of situation, if those kids are minors, they're living with their parents, And that other minor that walked in is a friend visiting another sibling, something along those lines where it's like, I know these people really well, so I'm not just gonna up and leave them, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's
it's crazy.
There's just something that doesn't sit well with me in that situation where I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Why would you not say anything?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's my own personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that there's so much information that we don't know still.
Mm.
But anyway, so how was the LA crime connected to the Maryland crime?
Right.
A hat, I'm pretty sure it was a cat, was left at the house in LA.
Okay.
And DNA from that was linked through CODIS to genetic material found at Rachel's crime scene.
Oh. Interesting.
So, however, because the suspect hasn't committed or has not been caught doing an offense that allows for his name to be entered into the system, we don't have a name. Yeah. So
he was caught. So the suspect
yeah
was in this one house in LA.
Yep.
That no one ever mentioned to anyone, but was.
Well, it was an active, so the cops came in, active investigation, they didn't have any leads, but they entered his DNA through CODIS as part of that investigation.
Right.
And then when Rachel's stuff happened, they entered that genetic material.
Right, and I get that, but so of course this house in LA
Yep.
was the one that caught the profile
Yes.
of this person.
Yes.
But when this crime in LA was being committed. I'm just trying to follow it.
Yeah, as he was leaving. Yep.
So as he was leaving, so he came in through a different way. So it might have been another door, a basement, a window.
Yeah.
Came in, did the attack, someone else walked in, exited the front door with the Ring door cam, and we only caught the profile of him, and that's how we got it. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
I got it now. I'm there.
You're good. So where am I? So questions that are still unanswered are what brought the suspect from California to Maryland?
Yep.
Has he been to other states?
Mm-hmm.
Has he committed other violent crimes? That one is more likely answered with a yes, but we just don't have proof of that.
Right.
So both cases are still active cases, but are also considered to be random attacks. What's a bit creepy is it's more than likely, like this kind of gives me and that's why we drink says goose camp. Like it freaks me the fuck out. It's more than likely that the suspect was in Maryland for weeks searching for their next victim. So
So it's one of those psychopaths.
yes.
Got it.
So the sheriff's office brought up the chilling fact that someone in that area knows who it is. They've slept in someone's house. They went shopping for food in the community. People saw this individual
Makes
way
sense.
before this crime was committed. Yeah, it
makes
does.
sense.
It does, but knowing like a creeper is in a community, you're like, ooh, what the fuck?
It immediately gives you that uneasy feeling of could it be this person, could it be that person? Are you new? You're new. What are you doing
I
here?
do have a description that'll come up. So here's what we have about the suspect. So the information I found earlier this year, he's described as being 5'9", in his mid-20s to 30s, who weighs about 150 pounds and has dark hair. The newly released drawings of him show he's of Hispanic origin.
Okay.
I cannot stress this enough, though. Law enforcement made it clear that he is. They don't want this drawing to resemble any generic Hispanic male, because we're all very familiar with those who are of Hispanic origin, people of color, just coming under fire, and that's fucked up. So that's why I kind of want to bring it up. Like, they really, from what I was listening to with this podcast, they really put in the time and effort to not, to resemble a particular individual. They use details from multiple witnesses through interviews done by themselves and a sketch artist. Because they wanted to do create a more unique image. And for me, I personally don't hear about these measures often, if at all. I mean, granted, I don't have access to law enforcement records, but in listening to other podcasts, you don't really hear about that often.
No.
I should also point out that witnesses on the Ma and Pa trail did see the suspect, and it was these particular witnesses that were interviewed. So it wasn't, oh, I think I saw this individual. Oh, I think I saw that. It was this person was seen on the trail. But it's one of those things where when we walk around, we're that person's kind of creepy, but we just kind of mind our own business, kind of keep them in the back of our mind and try to get away. So I think it was one of those situations.
Okay.
Rachel's routine made her the perfect target, which is bullshit, because no woman should have to fear for her life while doing a structured routine.
I like my routine.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like not having a routine.
Yeah. So also this released sketch features a hat that was often worn by the suspect. So they're like one of them without a hat, one of them with a belt cap. But that hat wasn't found at the LA home, but it was like something that people commonly saw.
Okay.
So I'll share more information about how to report tips at the end of the story, but I did want to cover a bit about Rachel's family handling the horrific crime and how the community has been affected. So Rachel's mother has appeared on camera more than once, and one of her first interviews pleaded with the suspect's mother on a mother-to-mother level to like come forward and be like, you know who this is. Like, they murdered my child. Like, put yourself in my shoes. One theory that law enforcement has is that the suspect could be a serial killer. The Harford County Sheriff told news outlets way in the beginning, quote, "My concern is that this killer is escalating. My investigators and I," well, this was from the actual like sheriff. "My investigators and I both firmly believe that if we do not apprehend this individual, he will kill again if he has not done so already. This suspect poses a threat to every community in our country and maybe outside." So, like, just to kind of go off a little bit. So in college, I took a self-defense class for women.
Me too.
And the quote unquote textbook that our professor had us read was called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker.
Interesting.
And it's interesting because, like, Christine on And That's Why We Drink has brought this up. For me, I was introduced to this book by my professor saying, I'm only going to have you read certain chapters. He's a little bit full of himself. It's not worth it. Just read what I'm assigning. And at that time, I bought that book. So I held on to it. And I have a family member who's now in college. And I attempted to read the book. I made 50 pages in 10 days. It was that slow. Yeah. So I ended up like putting sticky notes on all the relevant information for this female family member of mine to read. So I'm like, here's what you should be aware of. So like, I do recommend this book. Like, buy it used. It's not, in my opinion.
Worth it to buy it new.
Yeah. So like, it's things like listening to your instinct, being aware of your surroundings. Like, that's kind of what the front cover of this book says, is like, this book could save your life. And it's true, because we have these internal instincts where if something strikes you as something wrong, something's probably wrong. Yeah. So like, being aware of that, I think, is really important. So anyway, so on August 19th, 2023, a vigil was held at the Monpa Heritage Trail. Those in attendance were provided bunches of flowers, including roses, lilies, daisies, and I'm not very familiar with this plant. It's beautiful, so I might butcher the name. Gladioli?
Yeah.
Yeah. That had been donated by a local florist. So businesses were coming together and donating, and it was great. Right. They've placed flowers all over the trail and by benches, because that was Rachel's happy spot. Right. And then photos of her with her loved ones, like, they were covered in like plastic, and then they were taped onto trees all over. So it was just a memorial for her. Right. But you also know how I operate, and that I can rant about stupid people. So I promise I'll end the story on a positive note, but I also wanted to bring up some of the bullshit so we can remind everyone listening that a crime like this goes way beyond the victim and the suspects. In my January digging to see if there was any information on where Rachel's body was found and what happened to it, I ran across two particular articles by the New York Post and the Daily Mail. Only these two sources interviewed someone who claimed they found Rachel and described exactly what happened to her. For scum of the earth like this, I don't believe in naming them or even giving them a pronoun, because they were clearly interviewed for the fame and didn't give a fuck about the family and friends of Rachel. Interesting. They look like a fuck. I will happily mention that their appearance on camera made them look like a twat and couldn't be taken seriously. Fortunately, one of the many articles I read addressed the scumbag, and law enforcement has put on record that this individual essentially doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. And like, remember that viral video, like the Catch Me Outside, like that whole...
Oh, God, it was awful.
It's essentially a version of that.
Yeah. So this one person, the same one person, was interviewed by two different, very highly credible, quote unquote, news sources. And
well, I don't know if they were interviewed by these two, but these two sources did republish a video of this person talking and like wrote about it. But they did give this person space in their news, whatever. And I'm like, why? Why? They don't know what the fuck they're talking. They just want the fame.
Because news sources don't actually
Well, it
have
depends.
any credible.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say they don't have any credible things to talk about, but it seems like they're just looking for the people that are going to talk about drama, not necessarily like yes, I understand that they're news sources. I understand that they have a job to do as well, but it's like,
I mean, that's why it's so important.
why?
Yeah, well, that's why it's so important to like look for the credible sources rather than the ones that are a little sketchy, because misinformation is obviously a thing, and I'm about to go into that. So sadly, a lot of drama has gone down regarding Rachel's children and their care. But I also want to preface what I'm about to say with this personal statement. My January research obviously brought out a lot of misinformation. My background in news has given me the fundamental knowledge to fact check everything. So like my major was mass communication video production.
Right.
My minor was film, but part of my minor was I had to take a reporting class.
Right.
And my professor was a local reporter. So like I learned those basic things. And then I also spent a year out in Montana working at a news station. So like making sure I publish accurate information, fact checking is ingrained into me.
Right.
And that's why I look through more than one source for consistent information, and why I've called bullshit on the 2 articles glorifying the individual that claimed to have found Rachel's body. Because like a lot of these sources, it's local papers, and a lot of them say the exact same thing. So I'm like, okay, like that's what I'm going to consider like the consistent information of what we know. With what I'm about to state, my intention is not to stir a pot, but bring awareness to the fact that Rachel's family is struggling. There are children involved in family dynamics that should not be held under a microscope to the general public for criticism. So back on track, I stumbled upon a GoFundMe that was started by Rachel's sister, Rebecca, for the purpose of raising funds for a funeral and to help her children with anything they may need. It all sounds wonderful, but the father of Rachel's oldest daughter has allegedly accused Rachel's family of cutting his daughter and the rest of the children out of the proceeds altogether.
Interesting.
A screenshot of his post, which I found on Reddit, states that Rachel's family did not deliver any Christmas gifts to any of Rachel's children, and the children have not received a penny from any of the fundraisers related to her, despite $54,000 being raised on GoFundMe alone. A part of me thinks this is just talk, because I highly doubt that such a religious family would purposely hold thousands of dollars away from her children for no reason. But I mean, it's something to think about. This father has also alleged that a business called Box Hill Pizzeria sent a sizable check to attorney Randolph Rice, the attorney representing the Morin family, for the purpose of purchasing Christmas gifts for his 5 children. Well, for the 5 children. He was told but couldn't confirm that these funds remain with this attorney. So like,
Very, very interesting.
yeah. And I mean, as you know, like I've been working at a law firm for quite a while now, where like when people pass away, you can't just distribute funds willy-nilly.
Right.
It can take a really long time,
Right.
because you have to make sure that assets get taken care of first. And like Rachel didn't have like a retirement. She didn't have insurance. Like she didn't have any of that. Because I mean,
Right.
we're in
Like,
our early 30s and we don't have that.
I mean, in theory we should, but that's a whole other ball of wax. But it's like, in theory, people that are just like younger in life, they don't have all these things. They don't have to worry about any of these things, because they're like, I'm gonna live forever. Which in reality, most of us probably are, unless there's some horrible tragic accident that seems to happen. But that's interesting.
Yeah.
But it's like, I guess with the GoFundMe thing, like, I guess my first question is, I don't really know how GoFundMe works specifically. I know that GoFundMe does take a portion. I don't know what percentage of the portion, so I'm not even going to try and like make a guess. But I know that they take a percentage of the portion just for their services, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But I don't know how that works, where if they send you a check, deposit into a bank account, and then is it the person's job who set it up to then distribute it the way they see fit?
Well, that's the claim by this one dad is saying is, you have this money. None of these kids got Christmas presents. Again, this is all allegedly. Like, I don't know fact. It's not my business either.
Right.
But like the main point is like, there's turmoil in the family.
Right. Well, and I'd be curious to see how amicable the divorce, the separation was from
From one of the partners.
from the first. It sounds like the first husband, because that's the husband of the oldest kids.
Yeah.
Possibly, but I don't know that factually, just because like there wasn't a lot of information out there. Like I could really validate, I mean, granted, like it's a picture, but my assumption in seeing her in a wedding dress with a guy, I was like, okay, she definitely was married. But we don't know.
We don't know which one she was married to, how many times she was married, and if this is the father of, let's say, just the oldest, or let's say the father of all 5 kids and they just recently got divorced. It's like, I don't know how amicable that was. I don't know how much you're trying to, like, I'm also slightly cynical in that sense, where I don't know who's sharing what information, what kind, like, are you trying to give her a bad name?
Yeah.
I would really hope you're not trying to give her a bad name, because that's like, to me, that's a private family matter.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be something that's like put out in the news in places. I feel like that's just something that I'm like, why are you airing your dirty laundry?
Exactly. And that's why, like, I wanted to cover it briefly, but I'm also like, it's no one's goddamn business either. Like, this family is struggling, like, it's hard. But also, another thing is, one of her children is considered disabled. So, like, when you have an estate where a child is disabled, that's when you're getting, I believe it's social services, please don't quote me, but you're basically getting government entity involved, and that makes things way more complicated. So, like, purely speculation, if they're still trying to figure out the finances, but they're dealing with the disabled child, like what they're entitled to, that shit takes time. And like for New York State, I believe an estate has to be open like a year and a half, because 7 months, nothing needs to happen. But like in case like a bank account or some sort of savings or investment, that gives it time to pop up and you can address it from there. So it's like, if they're complaining because their kids aren't getting money immediately, I can kind of understand that, especially when there's an active investigation going on.
That's frustrating.
Yeah.
It's like, how am I supposed to help pay for this child in this month where I can barely afford this for myself?
Exactly.
Like, how else am I supposed to make this work? Am I supposed to do this, that, the other thing? I understand that frustration. I do. So I'm like, but I'm like, you don't need, it's not going to help you any if you just talk about it and you try and trash your ex-wife.
Yeah.
Or like put your kids in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And I guess that, like, that would be one thing I'd be really curious about, is how many of those kids are going to separate dads.
Well, that's one of the things. So basically, as for the children now, Rachel's brother, Michael Morin, spoke to the messenger and told them that her children have been split up. They live in 3 different homes, some with their fathers and others with Rachel's relatives. So they are... Well, so they are with relatives. It's not like they're in a foster home where they're around complete strangers. And apparently one of the fathers has stepped up to help keep the kids together through activities and supporting them in every way that he can. So it's like, no, they're not all living under the same roof, but there is some sort of effort to keep them together. Yeah, it's freaking brutal. But on a brighter note, there is a Facebook group called Art for Rachel Morin that was started by Michael. The first part of the description states, quote, "We invite you to share a piece of art that you have created in honor of a special person who was taken from us too soon. This group was created to remember and honor the life of Rachel Morin, and we would like to encourage you to express your feelings and emotions through art," end quote. And a video was posted featuring Rachel's oldest daughter, she's 18, talking about how much she misses her mom, and she's standing on like this flat plot of land where her mom once lived. And so it is truly a page filled with positivity, but she's like, I can't let my mom's case go unsolved. So as of February 2024, reward for information leading to an arrest has been set at $35,000. Anyone with any information is encouraged to call the Hartford County Sheriff's Office at 410-836-7788 or email a tip to rmtips@hartfordsheriff.org. So I guess the big thing to remember is there's still a killer out there, but you can look up the sketches to see if he rings a bell for you. He could be involved in more crimes that just haven't been linked yet. But justice is definitely needed for Rachel. And like, I do also want to say, I brought this up before. I recognize that Rachel is a white woman. I recognize that quite often there's a certain terminology for it, and I'm blanking, but it's like white woman syndrome, where if a white stereotypical woman, because Rachel is white with blonde hair, a lot of resources are dedicated to finding these women faster than people of color and indigenous women. So I do.
That's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah. So I do want to shed light that I do recognize, like, it is our first episode of hopefully many, and I am portraying that. But I also do like shedding light on unsolved crimes where there could be more victims. And if this guy really is doing everything random, like law enforcement is saying, he could have a different MO. They may not all be fitting that. They could be very different. So there is someone out there. I guess my big thing is make sure you're aware of your surroundings. Like, be careful. So that is the unsolved murder so far, unless we have an update soon, of Rachel Morin.
Wow. It's one of those things that makes me like, I'd be curious to know the statistics of how many, like you mentioned, like the stereotypical white woman syndrome, where I'd be curious to see how many of those missing slash unsolved, I should say, cases are stereotypical white women as opposed to all the ones that have been solved.
Yeah.
I'd be really curious to know like what the actual percentages are for these are the people that are black, these are the people that are indigenous, these are the people that are like immigrants, these are the people that are male, and name the other category. Yeah. But I'd be really curious to see how many of those people that are missing or unsolved are actually the stereotypical white woman that everyone thinks, oh, it's a stereotypical white woman. It's like, there's lots of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's why I just wanted to mention, like, it is the very start of the journey. I do have a list of, like, cold cases that were finally solved, and I do have the intention of covering a wide geographical, like, doesn't matter if you identify as male, female, non-binary. My dog's just going crazy.
I love you.
But, yeah, I just figured this one was pretty recent, and it's still developing, so it was a fascinating first story.
I like it.
Hey, Coda.
Coda, I need you to get down, please. I love you, but
all right.
Stay down, please.
So our next month is going to be March. What do you have in store for us?
So my mom got me this book. It is called Wish You Were Here by Jodi Picoult, who we mentioned earlier. This was written, I'll read the inside of the book, the inside cover, because this book sent me for a loop. Like, again,
Am I going to tell you fuck off again?
No.
Oh.
You might actually be like, I don't think you'll cry at the end of this one. I don't think so. But inside cover. Diana O'Toole is perfectly on track. She will be married by 30, done having kids by 35, and move out to New York City suburbs, all while climbing the professional ladder in the cutthroat art auction world. She's an associate specialist at Sotheby's now, but her boss has hinted at a promotion if she can close a deal with a high-profile client. She's not engaged just yet, but she knows that her boyfriend Finn, a surgical resident, is about to propose on their romantic getaway to the Galapagos, days before her 30th birthday, right on time. But then a virus that felt worlds away has appeared in the city. On the eve of their departure, Finn breaks the news. It's all hands on deck at the hospital. He has to stay behind. You should still go, he reassures her, since it would be a shame for all their non-refundable trip to go to waste. And so reluctantly, she goes. The virus that we're talking about is the COVID virus. This is a COVID book. So
timely.
It's a crazy little loop. Almost immediately, Diana's dream vacation goes awry. Her luggage is lost, the Wi-Fi is nearly non-existent, and the hotel they'd booked is shut down due to the pandemic. In fact, the whole island is now under the quarantine, and Diana is stranded until the borders reopen. Completely isolated, she must venture beyond her comfort zone. Slowly, she carves out a connection with a local family when a teenage girl with a secret opens up to Diana, despite her father's suspicion of outsiders. In the Galapagos Islands, where Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection has formed, Diana finds herself examining her relationships, her choices, and herself, and wondering when she goes home, she too will have evolved into someone completely different.
Ooh.
So, And of course, I've already mentioned this and I'll mention this again. Jodi Picoult is the master of plot twists. So if you can guess that plot twist, like, good for you. I don't think you can though. Because I definitely did not. And I was like, what? So that's our next one that we're going to read.
We're in for it.
Oh, you're in for it.
Alrighty, so that wraps up episode 1. We did it!
We did it!
All right, bye guys.
Toodles.